As the quest for knowledge continues to progress forward, we find ourselves still asking questions about human behavior, social technology, and the future of mankind. In a world devoid of such discussion, 2 Crowder College instructors have been chosen to podcast their views on current events, weird science, and pop culture. And now, broadcasting from Crowder College, this is Psych Out with Nathan and Jason.
Welcome to the world of tomorrow!
Welcome to Psych Out, episode 31. I am your host, Nathan Gandy, psychology instructor here at Crowder College, and my colleague...
I'm Jason Edgar, speech instructor at Crowder College, and it's a rainy day.
Rainy day at Crowder. Well, it's a little bit better out there now, but this morning, I don't know about you, do you, massively want to sleep during rain?
Not really. Well,
it's like NyQuil to me.
Yeah,
it just knocks me out.
Well, we have to thank Nathan for the first episode of Psych Out on television. Or on YouTube. So, fantastic job, Nathan.
Hooray!
And I guess, are we sticking with the black?
That seems to be our trend. I think it's more, I'm just so afraid I will turn into a shirt color green screen, which we played with a little bit.
Yeah,
we're going to play with some more this episode.
Oh my gosh, I just read the headline for the latest Syrian news, and it is confirmed they use sarin gas. Now that harkens back to the newsroom, right?
Yes.
Like that's what they, in the fictional world, that's what they accuse the United States of using. But
oh, man.
Wow, talk about fiction mimicking reality. So at that point, Nathan, now what do we do? Do we just take the, sarin gas away?
Yeah, the current deal is through the UN, through the U.S., and through Russia, which is hand us over the all chemical weapons, and you will not be engaged in military action from the U.S. Now, that announcement from the UN was less than an hour ago, so I may change by the time this gets posted.
We will most certainly see. So,
scary stuff.
What happened over the weekend with it? Oh, yeah, they just agreed to a chemical deal. So I guess they'll be taking away all the chemical weapons, Russia and the United States. I guess in unison, taking out the Syria chemical weapons. And so what do you think, Nathan? Do you think that this will go just super clean? Assad will be like, yes, here's all of my weapons. Now or are you kind of like skeptical?
There's a difference between optimist, pessimist, and somewhere in the middle is skeptic, and that's where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one happy bit of news, I don't know if you saw this, but Sweden announced, I think it was yesterday, maybe earlier in the weekend, that they will take any number of Syrian refugees.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
sure.
anyone that comes, they'll give the amnesty and bring them to you and try to help out their family. And they've done that before. They have a precedent of probably the most displaced in war, of our... Middle Eastern conflicts in the recent decade. They've taken the most refugees from that. So
what a good country!
Yeah, good for them.
How do you think Obama looked throughout this entire process? Because he was kind of like quick shot to militaristically bomb them, and then as he was about ready to make his announcement, then we strike this accord. So what do you think, Nathan? How did Obama play in this whole role?
I know several colleagues and friends who, though generally are supporters of him, were not happy with the militaristic angle that he had.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it did seem like, I don't want to say the carpet was put out from under him, because I don't sincerely believe that any president that in modern history has been like, I want to fight because I want to fight. I think it's legitimate feeling, even if they're incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he was like, man, I sure do want to go kill some people. Let's go do that. Instead, but he seemed to be focused, this is what I think is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And even people in his own cabinet said, nah, I don't know about that.
And it looks like diplomacy won the day.
Right.
Which fingers crossed.
Right. And and this is the joke that on Obama is, he is a Nobel Peace Prize winner. So it is unfortunate that was the solution. Now, again, we said on the last podcast why I'm not a leader is.
Yeah.
I can see both sides.
No,
and I don't want to choose.
There were
I'm real good at that.
There were a few people that were almost like in support of Putin, saying that this was a big call. This was like his almost coming out party where it's like, hey, look at me, I'm a great leader, and that kind of transitions us into the next topic where
Russia.
Vladimir Putin is not a very nice guy. In fact, his regime, if you want to call that, is anti-gay, right?
Yes.
And
Laws have been made.
Yes, and it's basically the exact opposite of the United States law, where it's like we don't want to see any like gay propaganda. You can't, and they say you can't like
you can't publicly come out as gay.
Yeah, absolutely, and they link it to minors, where it's like if you even show any propaganda towards minors, we'll get you or whatever.
Yeah.
Now this proves problematic because the Winter Games in 2014 are
Really
in
soon.
Sochi.
Yep.
Sochi Olympics, and so there's already being a how would you say, a drumbeat building for the United States to boycott the Olympics. Now, to give a little backstory here, if you're not comfortable with the country that is hosting, whether they have human rights violations or they're, I don't know, they have a massive trade deficit with the country, whatever.
See Nazi Germany.
See Nazi Germany.
Classic example.
And see the last Summer Games in China, right?
Yeah.
In what was it,
Beijing.
Beijing. There we go. So, and also the reason I bring this up, Nathan, is because whenever I host my big old debate tournament in a couple weekends, this is going to be the resolution. A boycott of the Sochi 2014 Winter Games is justified. So, what do you think?
Oh, that's a tough issue. I completely disavow their legal dealings and laws. I can't believe they do that in this modern age, whether or not you approve of it. And again, I can give you the empirical side. Those of you who are listening who either question or aren't certain or are against that version of sexuality, do you know the data is clear? It does not corrupt youth. It does not change their sexuality. It does not make them worse parents. Like, I mean, there's nothing on the board. It's a philosophical / religious issue at this point, but it's not a scientific one. That's off the table. So the fact that you can't be this because we think it will corrupt minors, no, there's no evidence to support this. So they are completely wrong by all measures. There now about the boycott, I like the idea of it if it would take the entire United States to come together and say, none of us. And I don't know, you made reference that legally we can't discriminate and don't discriminate. But social pressures are still very strong in some areas that are anti-gay or whatever. And so I don't know if you could get the entire sports complex, for lack of a better phrase, to say we're not going. I think if we didn't, what an image, because we're not to toot our own horn here, but we are a strong presence, not only in the sports community but just in the world community.
Do you think it sends a message whenever people boycott? Like, are boycotts effective?
I think they can be, absolutely can be. But I like the idea of boycott from the personal side, meaning, even if my action doesn't change, I am taking a personal stance because it's a philosophy that I agree with. And I think that's important too. And I guarantee if everything continues as is, there are going to be some American athletes who won't go.
Yeah.
And that'll be their choice. And to me, that's even more exciting because it's easy to do something. Well, I say it's easy to do something. It's easier to do something when there's a big payoff. It's harder when it's just you living your life.
Yeah.
and that's rough. That's hard.
And also, that's like where the debate can actually go at the debate tournament. Do you recognize one specific person boycott the Olympics, like Michael Phelps, or do you do the United States Olympic Committee, or do you do specific events like women's softball or something?
Right.
We're going to be running it as like probably the United States. I probably shouldn't give it away.
I was about to say, if they listen, are you going to tell them the end?
Well, you'll also disclose like your arguments and things like that. But ultimately, just I want to say the United States Olympic Committee is about the only ones that can do that. But we started off with some such sad news, Nathan. We didn't even tell the listeners what our theme is for this show.
We did. Well, our last beat of current events, very current, as in as we're recording this, it's coming out this week, is of course the video game many people are waiting for, Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yes.
Which is our segue into, we're going to dive deeper into some psychology of video gaming. But if you follow gaming news, this has been in the media for a while, not just for the game press, because it's usually hot issues. Now, one of the reasons it's in game press is it's got the word Grand Theft Auto, and that kind of has a history and legacy of some people using it to soapbox certain political or psychological beliefs or agendas. So that's probably going to come back. Those of you who watch 24-hour news networks, don't be surprised if this becomes a hot story just because it's got the name that is synonymous with past stories.
Yeah.
But we'll get more into that into the future. But are you gonna? You said your brother's a big gamer. In fact, he was very excited about this game.
He's a big gamer and he's a big Grand Theft Auto guy. So all he's been doing is having like a countdown for I think it's going to be tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah, Tuesday.
Yeah. They're releasing this game. Not a lot of people know Grand Theft Auto 5 is releasing, but he's one of those people that it's like almost like a Tickle Me Elmo where he wants it at midnight. But listen, Nathan, if you were to call Grand Theft Auto 5 a movie, it would be the second most expensive movie ever.
Yep.
Pirates of the Caribbean, I want to say 4, was the most expensive movie of all time. So the Rockstar Games really put a lot of money into this game. It's one of the most expensive movies of all time. It's not even a movie, but
no. In fact, I just read or watched a review today in prepping for this from a source that I like, and they said that one of the things they were most impressed with was the level of writing quality. Like they spent their money on their writing team.
Really?
And
yeah.
So you mentioned movie. They said, yeah, it absolutely can hold up in that regard. So.
And I guess for me, I mean, really the only connection I have here is that I listen to, like I've told it numerous times, Opie and Anthony, and they have guests on. And who they've had recently is this guy named Laszlo. Are you familiar with him? He's the guy that's in charge of all the radio stations that are in the Grand Theft Auto world. And so whenever you jump into a car, you'll know that you can go on multiple stations, and you can have, and they're playing multiple music, and well, you need a creative designer right there too. And Danny McBride is actually going to be one of the guests. And
nice.
Yeah, so just stuff like that where you'll have like Danny McBride in the radio DJ, or maybe like a Bryan Cranston voicing one of the people though. And speaking of like that continuity of a story, my brother's read somewhere that as soon as you, like, let's say walk into a building, there's not like a 3-second load screen.
Right,
jumps right into the screen, and it's going to make it like almost like a watchable, movie that's not necessarily like a video game where you have that little loading screen at the bottom.
Yeah. So Rockstar has always been good about their seamless environments, meaning you don't wait for things to pop up. You just go do them.
There we go. Well, I really want to, before we go on, I want to talk about this story about, what's his name?
Immanuel Kant.
Yeah. Okay, so these two Russians, Nathan, I guess speaking of Russian news, they were having a discussion over Kant's critique of pure reason. And apparently the guy who was losing the argument decided to shoot the other guy that was winning the argument. So
I guess I should ask the question, Jason, is this a viable debate option?
No.
Okay.
Like it's
violence.
It's what the joke is like this isn't a good form of valid reasoning, where it's almost like coercion, where if you point a gun to somebody and say, "Hey, you should vote for Mitt Romney." That's not very persuasive, but you really bought their argument. So
I had a student. Actually, I did not have a student. It was a colleague of mine when I taught in St. Louis. It was the college class, just like we teach here at Crowder. Some hot issue was being discussed. Pick whatever hot topic. One student shared his opinion, like, okay, this is what I think is right or wrong, and the student next to him turned around, punched him right in the face.
Oh yeah.
And he was taken from the class, and ultimately was. Expelled, but his father came to pick him up, I guess, and they were telling his father, well, this is why he has to be expelled. This is what happened, and the father was like, yeah, that's what I taught him.
Yeah.
If you disagree with someone, the way you answer the disagreement is punch them in the face. Show them you're physically dominant.
Incorrect.
So, yes.
And actually, there is a persuasive fallacy known as a non sequitur, where the punch in the face literally doesn't go with the argument. So you get up and you pick up your teeth and you go, hey, by the way, you just committed a non sequitur persuasive fallacy.
But it would probably be a bit jumbled because there'd be blood in your mouth. So. All right, well, let's take a break there. And when we come back, we have some aquatic weird science.
Weird science.
Welcome back to Weird Science here on Psych Out, our portion of our show. We like to talk about what's crazy, what's weird, what's awesome in the world of science. And this time, we have to talk
We're
about
talking about something that's ugly.
Yeah, what's ugly in
Sorry to
science? Yeah, step right over my cues. I see how it
Yeah,
is.
there we go.
But it's your story, so feel free. You brought it to the table, and I think you brought it to the table because you want us to put the picture up behind us.
Yes.
And some cruel I don't want to look at it.
Lord of mercy.
I don't want to look at it. All right, so I want you to describe what watchers are looking at and listeners are not looking at.
Yes, all right. Well, according to the Telegraph, the endangered blobfish
What a name.
is voted ugliest animal on the planet. Oh. And the blobfish looks kind of sad
It
that
looks
he's been
sad
mentioning
that
that
he- yeah,
too.
he voted that.
So anyways, what do we got here? The gelatinous creature, which has a sagging and sad-looking face, is under threat from trawling at the coast of Australia where it lives. So not only is it ugly, but it's endangered.
Man, that's a double trouble.
Save the blobfish.
That's probably not going to happen. It reminds me Drew Carey, back when he did stand-up, used to have a bit about, he said, you always hear about dolphin safe tuna, but what about the tuna? Like, no one cares because they're not cute, you know?
Yeah. Tuna's gross. Well, Nathan, you were skeptical because I guess it's hard to judge something based on aesthetics, but this was a vote, probably,
Yeah,
right? So
sure.
they said, here's 5 ugly animals. Which one do you think is the ugliest?
Right.
And
I don't know too many people who would see that and say, no, I disagree.
yeah. I'm not inviting
Certainly
that
not
thing to
me.
my party.
All right, well, I had a news story about a recently discovered fish in Africa that is not ugly. In fact, you see a picture up here. It looks like a fish.
It must not be ugly. It's getting some action after 17 days.
It is. Yeah, that's what's most remarkable about this fish is, you know, different animals reproduce in different cycles, but this fish is capable of having babies within 17 days after it is born. So that's a quick trip to puberty and adulthood.
And it's having a baby at 17 days.
Yep.
So it must be, getting on
Day
fishy
16
style
is pretty
on
hot.
Day 15,
Yeah.
This fish is called, Nathan, the Nothobranchius cadlicki.
Yeah, that's what I would call
Fastest maturing vertebrate species known to science.
it. Known to science.
So how did this jump out at you, Nathan?
Well,
And for some reason, we both brought fish to Weird
yeah, we
Science
did.
today.
Well, it popped to me one because, when I've been in the middle of child psych teaching about reproduction, so the pregnancy, the labor, and all that stuff. And, of course, you talk a lot about the time frame, 9 months for humans. And, we take a long time to mature after we're born. But here you got a fish that does it in 17 days, ready to go. And what scientists say is the reason it evolved that way was if you look at the parts of Africa where it's located, it's parts that experience constant drought. See, an animal that has very quickly can make babies before the water goes away.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
seems like a
absolutely.
good idea. So
I was watching something on North America where they're in that show, North America, where it was found in the desert, these types of frogs that they can only survive if there's a rain in the desert, and then they try to live in the puddle, and as soon as the puddle evaporates, if they're not fully grown frogs,
bad news.
they're going to die. Bad news.
street.
Well, hey, I know we were wanting to talk about during the intro, but you just saying flooding kind of reminded me of this Colorado flooding. So,
Yes.
this kind of formulated over the weekend, but it started off as like, there's a flash flood, there's one person that's died, but we have unknown amount of people that haven't been found. But even over the weekend, they still haven't found
Yeah, it
upwards
moved into the hundreds. I want to
wow.
say this morning, maybe even in 1,000. We may have broke that. I'll have to double check my sources. But so yeah, it's definitely got worse. I don't have any current news on that, but something we're thinking about. So if you guys know friends or family, we certainly have some in Denver. Do what you can.
Cool. And I mean, to my knowledge, well, I guess aside from St. Louis, probably like in '94, but I don't remember a huge flood taking so many lives in the United States. Can you?
What was Katrina's final count? And there were
Well, it's more like a hurricane, though.
That's true. I was thinking of levees breaking. So
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I don't know. It's been a while.
Well, cool. All right. What about this next bit of weird science, Nathan?
This is my final little piece, and this is not aquatic, but I kept forgetting to bring it up, and I thought it was interesting. Architectural, let's say, goof.
Okay.
Viewers can see the picture of this pretty regal and metallic-looking concave building, estimated over $300 million in construction. Well, turns out for a couple of weeks out of the year in London, when the sun, for a couple of hours a day, the sun hits it just right, and it becomes a laser, and it melts whatever's underneath it. In fact, there's some pictures of cars melting. You could cook food in that hour window,
Mm-hmm.
and so one of those architects didn't quite figure out, I guess, in this case, the weather
Yeah.
patterns or the
Well, and also
the climate effect on their
also,
design.
It looks like to be concave, and so
Yep.
like you have light projecting off of light.
Yeah,
projecting
it's
off of light.
a focus beam of
Yeah.
light, of sunlight, and so the architects have said they're going to build some sort of awning that will block it from traffic and such. But I don't think this building has been around more than a year, so we haven't seen the total effects.
Yeah, I wonder what happens when a person walks into the glare.
Really hot. Sure.
I always think like whenever you
Sunburn.
remember when CDs existed, and and you could reflect a light off of it, and
Yes.
it wouldn't burn your eyes, but it would like
yeah.
get that out of me.
Yeah.
Wow. Then that's like an entire.
It's like, hey, look at my building, and there goes my retinas. It burned out my pupils. Thank you.
Well, there we go. That is some
Dangerous science.
definitely
isn't it?
weird science.
That's like
So-
evil genius level. Like, here's a building,
Oh
I made
yeah,
a laser out of
it
the sun.
reminds me of Russ Hopper once again. So he probably lives in this building. Which,
Yeah.
by the way, we are going to have him in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
For some reason, he wants to bring back Toastmasters to Crowder. So me and him and Carrie Keckley are probably going to bring back Toastmasters.
As long as it's science Toastmaster.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that, and I bet he would talk about using this energy for good. He talks about passive solar.
Yeah.
And I understand that, like using the sun to kind of, I don't know, heat your home in a certain way, but in this way, it could be a passive weapon. Awesome.
All right, cool. Well, let's take a break there as the weirdness keeps on coming. When we come back, we will do our feature where we're going to plug in a little bit deeper to the psychology of video gaming. So, see you then.
Game over. Episode 31 of Psych Out is brought to you by the most award-winning group
Who?
of Crowder College,
Who?
the Crowder Debate Program.
Who is you?
I mean, I'm assuming that we're the most award-winning because they give us awards for all those events that we do. Anyways, Nathan, where do we win these awards? We win them at district, state, and national tournaments, and we're also a proud member of both the Missouri Association of Forensics Activities and Pi Kappa Delta.
Forensic, that means talking, not CSI, right?
Yeah. Not criminal forensics, although they have really cool equipment. No experience is necessary, so you can join the debate team and not have ever debated. And I always hear people say, well, everyone always says I'm a good debater and I should join the debate team. Well, why don't you?
And also, probably you're not. No, wait, that doesn't help recruit. Sorry.
Well, I mean, there is a lot more that goes into it besides just
But
watching
I
the
assume
daily show once a day.
that's what a coach's job is, right? You teach them
Yeah.
the techniques to get better at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, the whole public speaking, critical thinking, note-taking, research.
Well, tell us about
All
an
that.
event. Any events coming
Oh
up?
my gosh, I'm glad you asked that, Nathan.
Nah, it's as if we planned this.
The team competes in parliamentary debate and
Yeah.
college public forum, as well as extemporaneous and impromptu speaking, oral interpretation, and oratory. So you got a good mix of debate events, limited preparation events, platform speaking, which is just, delivering a speech. And then also, if you're a little actor, you can do some oral interpretation.
Hey, you should have to do a scene from any movie where you're a president inspiring your troops because aliens are invading.
Or Harrison Ford just running saying, "Have you seen my son?"
Where's my hon?
Interested students can enroll in Speech 191 topics or email Jason Edgar at jasonedgar@crowder.edu. That's also me.
There's no S in that, right?
Yeah. No Edgars. Yeah. Nathan called me Edgars.
All the time.
Scholarships are available to dedicated students, and the team will begin their 4th competitive year as they host October Slam on October 4th and 5th.
Slam.
And your very own Nathan Gandy will be judging in the afternoon sometime.
In a steel cage.
Welcome back to Psych Out, our video game edition, episode 31. Although Weird Science didn't really lend itself much to video games, our feature most certainly will. So anyways, Nathan.
Yes.
Hey, what's going on?
Nah, I was just hanging out here. Thought I'd record a podcast.
Excellent. Well, anyways, Grand Theft Auto 5 coming out essentially midnight tonight, Nathan. And
Yep.
car stealing, drug dealing, prostitution, contract killing.
Also, golf, mountain bike riding.
Yeah, parasailing,
yoga,
all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
These are all the things you can do in the Grand Theft Auto 5 world. You can essentially be the biggest, baddest criminal ever.
Yes.
And this is a great form of escapism, but we're the ones kind of like creating this. So, Nathan, tell us kind of like your background. I don't know in games. I know you're a big gamer, but what do you think about, I guess, video games? And I don't know, do they cross apply to violent behavior or destructive behavior, or just any notes you have on the subject?
Sure. It's a tough subject to talk about because there's a lot of loud voices on both sides of the argument. One, because you can play violent acts versus watching or reading them, that they're more impressionable to us. And then the other side, which is we talked about earlier, demographically and statistically, it doesn't make sense. In the countries that consume more video games, Japan being the number one, they have far less crime, far less violence, and they also play violent games. Same for the U.S. It's crime has gone down. FBI says it's the safest it's ever been, but we've played more games than ever. So we have these two opposing forces, and trying to find the truth in the middle of that is pretty difficult.
I mean, what schools do you know of that have studied this?
I know quite a few universities. If viewers want to post or ask questions on Facebook, I'll look up those. I can't remember some of the studies off the top of my head in terms of the schools that did them, but there are quite a few. Typically, they fall into two camps, and researchers will try to get college students to, because that's typically who you have in your early research, to play a game and then do an act that they will somehow measure levels of violence. And that in itself is always a bit suspect in research, because how is the thing in your laboratory truly violence? You know, what does that violent act mean? So that's a bit difficult. That's where they get a lot of flack, and a lot of sort of counter arguments as well. This is a thing done in a lab that's not replicative of real life type stuff. But right now, I can tell you the studies, whenever you have a group of studies that one side says one thing and one side says the other, what you have to do is you have to basically say, well, where does the preponderance of evidence, meaning where do more of them lean than the other?
Sure.
In this case, more of them lean towards violent gaming in and of itself does not create nor cause long-term violence. There's a couple of caveats there. For example, if someone already has a pre-existing mental illness, something that's already predisposing them to behavioral problems, gaming can be fuel, can be on that fire. In this case, the gaming didn't create it, but it helped give an outlet for someone who was already having behavioral issues. But it wasn't. We wouldn't say the game caused the violence in and of itself. And yeah, GTA is a great springboard because it's kind of whenever the media gets wind of a game. In fact, just recently there was a young kid, and we still don't know the reasons why. Maybe it was an accident that he was playing a video game. In this case, he was playing one of the old Grand Theft Autos, and then later shot his grandmother.
Oh, okay.
And again, at the time of the article, was an accident. He was like 8 or something. So already an age-appropriate issue. But so we see that, and then when the news story came out, I kept seeing articles that read, kid kills grandmother after playing Grand Theft Auto. Temporally, they are correct.
Yeah.
But that name implies an association that may or may not be there. And in this case, the literature doesn't really support that.
Yeah. It kind of sounds like media framing. And also with video games, like we're talking about Grand Theft Auto for one, but another popular game, it's not necessarily coming out, is Call of Duty, and it's like a first-person shooter game. And I've heard Penn Jillette, a famous magician, and he's also a well-learned guy.
Yeah, quite the skeptic.
He says that, he paraphrases this statistic that more people have played Call of Duty than have listened to the Beatles. And I just wanted to correlate that to, well, we have so many people playing Call of Duty. We have so many people playing first-person shooter games. But then you cross-apply your analysis that says we live in the most civilized times.
Right.
So do you think that we're getting kind of some of our instinctual aggressions out in video games, and to the fact that there is actually an advantage to playing video games?
Right. There's a researcher, I want to say his name is Jenkins at MIT, and I apologize if that's wrong, but he's been doing this since the 90s. He's been looking at gaming and violence, and he's very pro-gaming for it. And he used to, in his talks, tell the story of, and he was in his 60s at the time, or 50s and 60s. When I was a kid, when we wanted to go outside and play something violent, we were violent.
Okay,
like,
sure.
Because you're grab my stick, grab my ball, I will come after you with my stick or ball. And it was kind of countering with, we do have this sort of safe space where we can sort of manifest this. And I can tell you now, and this is a bit of adult reasoning behind it, yes, I personally have digitally killed thousands, millions of aliens and people and bad guys and things.
And I've killed hundreds and thousands of Goombas and turtle shells on Mario.
Yet, I think both of us we're fairly pacifistic and pretty abhorred by violence when we see it. So, and now that's an anecdotal story, but Jenkins uses that as kind of a frame to, violence is something that has been and will be. How the games manifest it is worth talking about, but the idea that I like what you said about more people play Call of Duty than listen to the Beatles. If we were to assume that, let's say that video games do cause people, like let's look at a school shooting, and let's say that, yes, we believe this game caused this kid to shoot up the school. Based on the number of kids that play games, that would be like a 0.0000001%. So even if you are true in this one case, it doesn't fit the 99.99% of adults and kids who are playing games. Now, I mentioned to you earlier, I do get on the soapbox in my class and with others of I am very big on age-appropriate content.
Okay.
Call of Duty, typically in the teen ratings, Grand Theft Auto rating mature. It'd be the same as an R-rated movie. That's
sure.
And stores have those labels or instructed not to sell without ID. And having worked in a game store, I can tell you we do ID. And in fact, for those of you listening who haven't heard this, when we look at music ratings, movie ratings, and video game ratings, video game stores have the best rate of not selling adult content to minors. The worst is music stores. They have the least likely to check ID.
Yeah.
And we're at like an 88% success ratio, almost 90%. With video games, movies like movie theaters, not carding and things like that.
Okay.
Or Walmart selling you a DVD, much less likely to do that.
And also, you wanted to say that it shouldn't be like these games of the past couple years getting particular slack like Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty, because even games like chess are based on war.
Right. I heard a talk once talking about board games, all these classic historical games, even chess. Chess is simulated war. We go and we watch wrestling matches. We watch, at one time we watched jousting. Now we watch football. This is all simulated war. This is something that we play and we're comfortable with because, in this case, chess is a good example. Well, they used the tools that they had to represent the violence. If they could have had a computer-generated images at that period of their life, I'm sure they would have expressed their game playing and violence that way. And you mentioned Penn Jillette, who has actually done a couple of talks and lectures on gaming, and he makes that correlation about if you look at the number of people injured in like high school football, let's say, which hey, I'm supporter of high school football. That's cool. But if you look at the number of injuries there versus high schoolers playing video games, I mean, football is a far more dangerous thing for our youth. But, we're people. We are not good with statistics. All we know is we see something scary, a kid killing another kid. We want to explain it. Well, I happen to know they play a game, and I don't understand those games, and they look violent to me, which they are. And so we start putting two and two together on our own and maybe jump to some conclusions that aren't supported by the evidence there. And as I said, with age-appropriate stuff, I don't want kids should not be playing Grand Theft Auto. Parents, I will tell you now, if your kid is 11 and you tell me that, I let him play it, okay, that's your fault. Like, that's not us, the behavioral side. Now, some kids are more mature than others. That's one reason why there's a gray area. I understand that. But, when in doubt, ultimately those who are responsible for the children, stores can't do it, psychologists can't do it, teachers can't do it. Those who raise the kids, we're going to have to pay attention to what our kids consume. And if I can digress a little bit, I've had that talk with Mandy of we really love Star Wars, but how young can they watch it? You know, it's,
Sure,
it's
yeah.
and it's fantasy violence. Like there's no blood, there's no gore, but you still have those moments of like, okay, what is the right age for this, and to not scare them or make them, glorify it, where they can kind of get into the fantasy and not get trapped up on that one little thing. So I don't have an easy answer, but age ratings are a good way to help parents if they're a little bit confused.
What about Angry Birds? Do you think that that's violent?
Hurling birds at pigs. Man, Angry Birds is just a whole phenomenon that surprised the heck out of me. But it's a good thing to bring up what you and I were talking about before we recorded of whole new demographics of gaming are opening up.
Yeah.
And
the games are getting easier too. Like you have Call of Duty that's like this super specific game, Grand Theft Auto that has 4 times the amount of map space that any game's ever had. And then the exact same year you have Angry Birds in outer space where it's
and in fact the mobile platform, meaning iPads, iPhones, Android phones, have like exploded gaming demographics, like in terms of men and women and children who normally would not be into that. I've shared with some of you have heard lectures I've given on gaming before, but one of to me the most amazing statistics is our stereotype of gamer is the 12-year-old boy. Well, right now the average age of video game player is 37.
Okay.
So not surprising, Grand Theft Auto is going to be one of the most popular games. We're adults who like games. We want to consume adult products. Secondly, the thing that excites me, because I'm about to have a daughter, is that women have made up almost 50% of the gaming demographic. Right now it's about a 51-49% split. And just the last 10 years, massive growth in women and girls getting into gaming. And that's because there's more gaming than Grand Theft Auto. Again, that's like such a vertical slice of the types of games you can play. And in fact, if you go look at my game library, I'm a huge gamer, not many games would resemble Grand Theft Auto because there's so many variants and types and interests out there that there's something you could get into. Yeah.
Well, geez, I don't know what else to talk about, Nathan. What do you think?
I think I need to go buy a game today. And also, I'm in a gaming mood now.
Yeah,
you got me talking about it.
And you said you didn't want to talk about it, but you like games so much that you want to essentially change your whole teaching perspective into a game. And I mean, like I said, you don't want to talk about it too much, but in education, it's almost like we start at 100% and go down, right?
Right.
Versus, like, if you wanted to gamify, you should build up. You should level up.
You're talking about gamification. Yeah, I said I don't want to talk too much because it's so much cool stuff to talk about, and I'll probably do a feature on it later in our podcast. But I have been traveling doing a lecture on gamification of education, which is look at those qualities that make video games so compelling and apply them to the classroom. And Jason's bringing up a great one. Video games, especially those Angry Birds, a good one. Anything that has a point structure starts at 0, and as you get better, you build up.
Sure.
Academically, we do the opposite. We give all students 100 points, and they have to hang on to it. And everything they miss, they lose points, and it will never come back up, which is not surprising why students ask forever about bonus points, because why wouldn't they? We've created a structure where you can only go down.
Yeah, and the efficacy is like, especially I can see it in people's eyes right now after just taking test 1 and they fail it, they just have this look in their eye like, well, there's nothing else I can do.
You know.
Versus like, leveling up and saying if you missed a speech, you can do it again, you'll level up. And then it just makes education fun.
I think so. So, I hope to get this. I've been traveling to different colleges. I hope to actually get into some schools and start doing that. So
cool.
It's exciting because I like games. In fact, I did my thesis on gaming.
There you go.
So.
Yeah. Well, that about wraps it up for our feature. So stay tuned for our closing.
You've been struck by a smooth criminal.
Jason and I would just like to stop and thank you, the dedicated listeners and watchers of Psych Out. Remember, you can watch these podcasts weekly at YouTube by going to youtube.com/CrowderPsychout. One word. You can also subscribe for free on iTunes. Simply search for Psych Out under podcasts, find our page, and hit subscribe. And don't forget, you can listen for free anytime at psych-out.podbean.com. Like and follow Psych Out pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all at PsychOut66. Be part of the show by posting or sharing with us the latest in current events, weird science, or popular culture. Once again, thanks so much for viewing and listening to Psych Out.
We will psych you out in the end. There we go, Nathan. Another
podcast, but only the second with our video magic.
fantastic. Woo! All right.
I think I was going to say for viewers, I don't know if we have any yet. Dr. Colthorpe sent me an email.
Yeah.
One viewer.
No,
Yes.
well, hey, YouTube says we have 40 views, so
Take that. That probably 35 were me.
yeah. I was gonna say about half
Making
of
sure
them.
it was up there.
But I thought it looked very well, and actually, I would rather pimp out the youtube.com/CrowderPsychout website as opposed to maybe the Podbean.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what YouTube is, and YouTube is doing nothing but gaining speed. So,
Right.
anyways, so Nathan, let's do some references back to our Riff Tracks adventure the other
Yes,
day.
I was so excited you came, and
Yes.
you didn't. You either lied about enjoying it or actually did, but either way, I felt good.
I love making fun of movies and listening to people make fun of movies. So I would say I laughed more during that than any movie over the summer. So
Well, it was an encore performance, so I look forward to. You said you might be interested in the next one. We'll have a nice big audience for that. And it's definitely
and
makes
actually,
it better.
I was going to show you, Nathan, that we have a picture of Mystery Science Theater that we can pop up here. But basically, for the people that don't know, it's the Mystery Science Theater guy.
Yeah.
There you go.
Michael J. Nelson, Kevin Murphy, Bill Corbett from Mystery Science Theater, now calling themselves Riff Tracks. I was a big fan since their MST3K days back when I was an adolescent. And I drugged Jason along, and he enjoyed it. And so there'll be another one in end of October for Halloween stuff. So maybe
Night of
we'll
the Living Dead
Night
or
of the Living
something
Dead, the
like that.
original George Romero. So
Yeah.
maybe we'll talk more about that. I wanted to talk about the origins, the beginning of the crazy crap on our desk.
Oh, okay,
You
sure.
want to go into that?
You first.
All right, so we've decided, since this is a visual medium, last week we had our sign up, but it was kind of meh, so
Meh.
we decided to give it a little more flavor and color. So we've each decided to bring one thing each time we record and slowly build our set. We also are willing to accept things if you want to send them to us, bring them by our office that you would like us to display. No advertisements. We're not doing that, though we will do advertisements perhaps for another thing. But for our set decoration, so today we each pick something from our office to bring up. And viewers, you can see I have a Batman. Not surprising, I thought it should be apropos since I talk a lot about Batman. He's actually specifically a chess piece. For a chess set that I've been collecting.
Both of our pieces are from gaming.
Gaming, absolutely.
Because I have an Angry Bird.
Angry
right here.
Bird. He is quite angry.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't know. I don't think I've even showed you the nursery we made for.
Yeah.
But I bought some of those Star Wars Angry Birds. You can.
Oh yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
What a good parent.
I am outstanding.
Well, hey, what are you doing this weekend, Nathan? I got a conference I got to go to.
This weekend, I've been putting off, but we're having a wedding shower in October.
Okay.
Which, by the way, you're invited to.
Yay.
So I don't know if I sent that to you on Facebook or not.
Not yet.
All right, I'll do that. But with that said, it's kind of it's going to be at our house. Someone else is planning it, but it's one of those, T- people coming over. I better clean and straighten, fix some things.
Yeah.
So I've got some house projects I'll be working on.
Well, Riff Tracks looks pretty good. So
Yeah, well, thank you.
House,
Thank you. We actually just got a whole bunch of stuff for the nursery from a friend of ours. So that's part of what we're doing there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my big weekend plan.
Yeah, I'm going to Lake of the Ozarks with my boss, fellow theater instructor, and Associate VP AA JP Dickey. And what this is at the Lake of the Ozarks is some of the speech and theater instructors from across Missouri all getting together, kind of like a little retreat, swapping scripts, swapping ideas. I've actually spoken to this thing twice. I talked about bridging the gap between high school and college debate.
Yeah.
And also, I'm like the Prezi guy at Lake of the Ozarks, so I'll just present like a presentation on Prezi. I guess people don't even know what that is. It's like a better version of PowerPoint.
It's the online version, right?
Yeah. But this year, I'm only going for individual meetings, and it's always a fun time, so that's where I'll be.
Teachers got to learn.
Teachers got a conference.
Yeah,
and it also misses, unfortunately, one of our faculty meetings. So. Hey, well, anyways, a little bit of Psych Out news, Nathan. Look at this iPad right here. Episode 16, Delete My Browser, got 405 listens.
Look at that.
Woo-hoo. Now, I'm going to think that we were a great podcast around that time, but honestly, I just think it was Kate's senior class just not thinking it was Podcast of Steel because that was episode 17. But hey, milestone. We went over 400 listens on one podcast, episode 16, and really it was, what was that? Delete My Browser?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I don't even know why you called it that.
I don't remember what that episode was about.
All right, well, never mind.
I'll tell you after I reread it.
And hey, look at that. Tim Benson wrote on our Psych Out wall, just catching up on Psych Out. Wanted to put my 2 cents about the contact injury debate. Contact injury.
Yes. We were talking about athletics and safety and artificial enhancement. What do you have to say?
Well, he said food for thought. As the equipment gets better, the players will hit harder. If we go back with less pads, the incidence of injury may decrease. Now, here is what he's saying. Remember whenever you see oldie times football players and they're wearing leather helmets?
Yeah.
There is a big push to go back to that because it's like, well, if we give you, like what Timothy says, is like if we give you a bunch of pads, you're just going to hit harder, and that's not good for anybody. So let's not protect your noggin and then see what happens.
I sent I didn't send the article, but I posted a comment back to his post on Psycho that when we were prepping for the sports one, I did see a study done in Canada where they're studying youth sports, and they did find that the more protective the headgear, the more risk people were taking because they assumed I've got all these pads, I'm invincible, I can do this, and so they would actually push themselves harder. So yeah, trying to find that sweet spot. I don't know if we could ever go all the way back to leather because the game mechanics have changed a bit.
Yeah.
But there is something to be said for as technology increases, where does safety come in? Where does intelligence come in? And so yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I think that's about it for episode 31 of Psych Out, Nathan.
Oh, good. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting both versions of this. And thanks to Crowder faculty and students, especially for helping get those numbers up for us. We've had a lot of great support. I've had students and faculty and employees I've seen in the hall who I have personally never said anything about to other than just an email that I sent out. And they still tell me that they like it and that they listen to it. So that makes me quite happy.
Yeah, and we said in the live read of how to listen, and the new YouTube channel is simply youtube.com/Crowder Psych Out, all one word.
Yep,
all right?
All right, well, we've wrapped things down. That's it. So, Jason, this is your chance to say goodbye in a truly meaningful way. So, what do you got? For listeners, he just hit me in the face with an angry bird.
Viewers.
When the cavalry comes, we're looking for a reason to break down these walls and jump. When the cavalry comes, we're looking for a reason to show you the brave don't run. They don't.
Mic check, 1 2 3, 1 2 3. Mic check, 1 2 3. Doing adjustments, doing some things, getting it out of his faces.